पर खबरों के साथ हाजिर हैं। आइए आपको सीधे लिए चलते हैं विदेश मंत्रालय के प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में।
Experience in disaster resilient infrastructure and offered to take initiatives in this context. Moving on to the plenary session, now the difference between the restrictive and the plenary is that, in the restrictive, the topic really was focused on all the leaders, on global economic situation, on the international economic governance, on international and regional hotspot issues, as well as national security and development. So Prime Minister's interventions were made in that context. The theme for the plenary was practical cooperation for common development. As you know, BRICS is really functions at two levels. One is of the leaders where they meet annually, and on the margins of the UNG as well as G20, where they really coordinate, cooperate and consult each other on issues of global concern. And there is the second aspect, and that is about practical cooperation. And so the plenary therefore focused on that aspect of practical cooperation for common development, for people-to-people exchanges and cultural cooperation, and etc. Again, this one is important because it picks up threads from the Goa Summit, where India, as the chair, had announced a series of initiatives that were focused upon enhancing greater people-to-people exchanges. And here our Prime Minister shared thoughts with the BRICS leaders in deepening BRICS partnership. And he mentioned, of course, the International Solar Alliance, and where the NDB could in fact finance projects relating to the International Solar Alliance. A very important point, which is very dear to him, and the fact that all the BRICS countries have the youth dividend on their side, and there's a youth population. So Prime Minister suggested that we should be BRICS should be mainstreaming youth in all its initiatives. Another point that Prime Minister made was that we should accelerate BRICS cooperation on smart cities, on urbanization and disaster management. He also dwelled upon BRICS partnership on technology and digital resources, as well as collaborative BRICS projects in this regard. And in this context, Prime Minister offered capacity building initiatives between BRICS and Africa. Then he, of course, as you know, NDB is a good success story of BRICS in the last 10 years, and therefore he suggested building on the NDB and the CRA milestones that have been reached in the BRICS context. And finally, of course, people-to-people contacts, whether it is in the context of tourism, cultural exchanges, film festivals, etc., was another element that our Prime Minister dwelled upon. Keeping the theme of the plenary as well as the restricted session, all the other leaders also took the floor, and really at the end the Xiamen declaration was adopted. The text of that is already put up on our MEA's website, so you can access it to be able to see what is the substantive content and outcome of this summit. I will quickly run you through some of the more important elements. I did tell you earlier that terrorism was an element that our Prime Minister spoke about, but he was not the only one. In fact, all the BRICS leaders came up very strongly in condemning terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, and you can see that being reflected in not just one but several paragraphs of the declaration that has been adopted, where the leaders have strongly condemned terrorism, and then they have also been able to identify and acknowledge the pernicious, the deleterious effects that certain terrorist organizations such as the Haqqani Network, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Toiba and others have had, and TTP others, that have had in terror, in spreading terror across. The leaders also called to make United Nations counter-terrorism framework more effective. The BRICS leaders called for greater efficiency in designation of terrorists and terrorist groups by UN committees, and for dismantling terrorist bases, of preventing movement of terrorists, of terror attacks that had taken place that were deplored all over the world, including in BRICS countries. They called for a comprehensive approach to fight against terrorism, and in countering terrorism, they did refer to radicalization, recruitment, movement of terrorists, blocking terrorist financing, money laundering, supply of weapons and drugs, and countering misuse of internet. There was also a reference to a swift and effective implementation of the UN Security Council resolutions on terrorism, and to make the implementation of the FATF standards on terrorism more effective, and called on states to prevent financing of terrorist networks and terrorist actions from their territories. So these are very important outcomes. For the first time, you would notice that there has been such a specific listing of terrorist organizations, and the fact that the UN Security Council, that BRICS countries should work together in facilitating listing of these under the UNSC. So those are very important developments. In collectively fighting this scourge, so there was this collective desire on the part of all the BRICS leaders to address the scourge and fight this menace collectively as a grouping. Some other elements which might be of interest to you, it's a biggish text, about 70 paragraphs, but each one of them is very important. We've gone through it in negotiations with other BRICS member countries with a lot of deliberations. So everything that's in the text is important, and I'm sure you would be able to identify the important elements. But I thought I'd just identify for you some of the elements which are also very important for India. For example, there is the reference to the need for predictability in accessing technology and financing for expansion of civil nuclear energy capacity, and I think you'll find it in paragraph number 15. Then there was this element about the establishment. Traditional medicine is an important element in an initiative that was introduced by India at the Goa Summit, and there was recognition about the importance, even as there is a whole formulation on the need for affordable drugs and health care. There was also a recognition for establishment of a BRICS long-term mechanism for traditional medicine to be able to build upon BRICS countries being in fact repositories of traditional knowledge and traditional medicine, and that could be developed further. Then leaders welcomed the establishment of a BRICS agriculture research platform, again an initiative that we had offered, and this would be established in New Delhi. Certainly our Prime Minister referred to it in his intervention about the need for addressing corruption and steps to address issues of anti-corruption and of asset recovery, and of establishing the BRICS Joint Task Force on Disaster Risk Management. On the people-to-people context, I've already referred to you about the BRICS Games, BRICS Sports Council, Film Festival, tourism, etc. I think an important element that will find repeated mention in the text would be the reform of the United Nations, of the Security Council, of any reform of the global governance architecture. So these are the broad elements of the declaration that I thought I'd share with you, because there is a common consensus of all the BRICS countries that has come out with this very forward-looking text that will lead to the future work of the BRICS. I'll stop here. I have, of course, Mr. Alok Dimri, the Joint Secretary, as well, to assist us in case you have specific questions on the outcome of the BRICS Summit. The declaration has already been adopted. Later this afternoon, as you know, in the program, there's going to be a BRICS Business Council meeting where the leaders will also address the BRICS business community, and they'll be signing off 4 agreements. In the evening, there is a banquet being hosted by President Xi Jinping as the host and the chair, in which, of course, apart from BRICS, he has also invited 5 other emerging market countries. Our Prime Minister will, in fact, be interacting with them informally at the banquet tonight, and thereafter he looks forward to sharing his thoughts in this outreach context, this BRICS outreach. We ourselves had invited the BIMSTEC leaders when we had hosted the BRICS Summit last year. And so our Prime Minister looks forward to sharing his thoughts on this, how we should move forward in the context of the global governance, and how BRICS as a grouping can make the difference for emerging markets and developing countries as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now the floor is open for questions. We will take 2 to 3 at a time.